Resolution requesting Congress to call a convention for proposing amendments to the United States Constitution as specified. There's a couple whereases in here. I'll go through them quick. Whereas the framers of the Constitution of the United States empowered the state legislatures to be the guardian of liberty against future abuses of the power of the federal government. And whereas the federal government has created a crushing national debt through improper and imprudent spending. Currently, it's over $32.5 trillion. Can't even imagine that. 32.5 million. Just since 2017, when we did ours, it's up about at least 10 trillion. Yep. I just had a comment here, just to kind of give you an idea what a trillion is. If you spent $40 a second, 24 hours a day, it would take you 289 days to spend $1 billion. To spend $1 trillion, it would take you somewhere around 792 years. I mean, you can't even fathom what it is. So we'll continue. Page 1. Whereas the federal government has invaded the legitimate roles of the states through the manipulative process of federal mandates, many of which are unfunded mandates. Or if they give us funds, they take them away later on after you get them enacted. The federal government has ceased to operate under the proper interpretation of the Constitution of the United States. And it says, whereas it is the solemn duty of the states to protect the liberty of the people, particularly for the future generations, by proposing amendments to the Constitution of the United States through a convention of states under the Article 5. The main point of the resolution is on page 2 down at the bottom, section 1. It states that the legislature of the state of Wyoming hereby applies to Congress under the provisions of Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States for the calling of a convention of the several states, that's 34 states, limited to proposing amendments to the Constitution of the United States that impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of the office of federal officials and member of Congress. In section 2, it says the legislature of the state of Wyoming adopts the application made under section 1 of this joint resolution expressly subject to the following reservations, understandings of declarations.
That to us.
Okay.
I think we've all read it.
Okay,
I think
we're good.
yeah.
Okay,
Why don't you go to section 3 there?
Do want to make sure that everybody realizes it takes 2/3 to get a call, and they have to all have the same proposal, and it needs to stay the same.
And really just give us a little history. That's what this is about, to make sure the language is similar to what other states, right? Because we've gone there and rescinded and passed it before.
Yeah, I do want to get to that too, and I can talk about that here in a minute. But in 2017, we did pass a balanced budget amendment. We were proposal. There's 28, I think, right now on that. But this is a little different, the topics, and we're actually doing 3.
Okay.
And this particular resolution has been adopted by 19, and it states the same exact way. So that Congress cannot take this and say, well, they're not reading the same, so we're not going to make the call. And so that's what the intent of this is to make sure that the states are all doing it the same. Section 3, I do want to make sure we don't miss that in the bill. It's a 1 state, 1 vote in here somewhere. There it is on page 4.
Right, page 4.
Section 4. It states in this resolution that it is a 1 state, 1 vote.
It's a big deal for our state, obviously.
Very big deal.
Yeah.
And currently, I just want to talk about that just a little bit.
Sure.
There's 33 states that have less than the average population if we averaged them out. And I think that's like 7.5 million. 33 states have that. There's 17 states that are above that. Why would we want to go to a convention and have it done by population? It isn't going to happen. The 33 states will never go for that. So if we went to one and they wanted to change the rules, the 33 would just say, we're out of here. And not, and besides that, we've got, there's Texas and Florida that have above it, and they already have signed this resolution, and they are agree. We're going to do a one state, one vote.
Okay.
Also in here, I think it talks about the delegates that we send, and that is determined by the states. I'm not sure exactly where that's at, but it is in the resolution. And I do want to bring up, I gave us a handout.
Okay.
If you can look at,
Can you hold it up again for us? We have several.
yeah,
Okay.
it'd be this just one with double pages. It has on top of it Article 5, and then it also has statute 922-102. I'd like briefly to go through 922-102. We passed this in 2017. I was luckily one of them, or I brought the bill and proud to bring it. And it's mainly, it's the limitation of authority for delegates to an Article 5 convention. And I would like to go through it because it's important. In Section A,
yeah, hit the highlights.
Section A, no delegate shall have authority to vote to allow consideration of or approve an unauthorized amendment for ratification to the United States Constitution. B, a delegate shall be directed to vote for procedures and rules mandated convention of states, whereas each state has one vote. Any vote made in violation of Section A or B in section shall be null and void, and delegate making the vote shall be immediately recalled and replaced. That's Section C. Section D, each delegate shall be required to take the following oath. And I really would like to read the oath. I do solemnly swear and affirm to the best of my abilities, I will, as a delegate alternate to the Article 5 Convention, uphold the Constitution, laws of the United States of America and Wyoming. I will not vote to allow consideration of or approve any unauthorized amendment proposed for ratification of the United States Constitution. I understand this and that I accepted penalties and impose any violation of this. There is in Section E, any delegate who violates the oath shall be guilty of felony punishable by imprisonment for 5 years and a fine not more than $10,000 or both. So that is very, very important.
So then G, where
Yep.
3 House members, 3 senators, but it's still only one state vote.
That's
So
exactly
those
right.
6 would have to come to an agreement on the
That's-
aye or a no on a vote.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing that out. So each house is going to vote for 3 members. We haven't done that yet. I'm
But at
thinking
the convention, one vote.
that's exactly right. And
Yeah.
and in a convention, the states can send how many delegates they decide they're going to send. But in the rules, the ones I've been to, and I think in the past, they're going to be limited because obviously they can only have so much space. And the ones I went to a simulation, we had 3, and I think they limited it to 3. And so there was 150 people potentially. And so you can have all the delegates you want, and they'll be up in the balcony, and the public will be in the balcony. The media is going to be in the back. They'll be filming this. Everybody will see what's happening. It'll be the biggest event in forever. But anyway, I don't know what else to say. I got other topics I'd like to go over, but I really would.
Maybe this question for the committee. So the 2/3 to propose this convention. Right? So that's what, 33 states or
34.
34 states.
Can I actually read that Article 5? I think you guys all have it there.
And then just tell us about then, so that's the 2/3 to propose. We all know the Constitution, but then to ratify.
Ratified's 38 states. If they come out with a proposal, they might come
Right.
out with one. I don't know if they'll come out with more, might not
Same
come out
rules
with
as
any.
always to ratify.
Yep, but to ratify, it's 38 states. It'll be, Congress will decide if it's by legislators of the 38 states or if it's by a convention of the states party or I'm gonna have help on that one, but we have done that once, I think, in the past, where the conventions are called within the state. And we adjusted that in the bill I brought in 2017 on how the conventions are run.
Okay.
But it can be one of those two ways. Congress will decide. Also, Congress to decide when we get to 34, which we've never met, and there's a reason why that is. Congress does not, the feds don't want us to know we have some power. They don't want us to even be close to bringing a proposal because it's probably going to be a better proposal than they're going to bring.
Hey, let me just go to any members now. Have any questions of the sponsor on the bill? Any parts of the bill you have questions about? Okay, I appreciate anything else in your presentation of the bill because we're going to move on to public comment.
I would like to probably let the public comment go. I got lots of things I could talk about, but if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Sure, yeah.
I have brought two other
Well, and
people.
they're going to be part of the public comment. Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be how that'll.
Are they welcome to go ahead?
Oh, absolutely. Once
Okay.
I'm just want to make sure you're done.
I can be done. I
Okay.
got lots more, but I'll
Sure.
let them go.
Okay, so we're gonna, is there any other elected kind of governor agencies? I don't see any in the room. Okay, so we're gonna move now to public comment. Okay, and so how this will work, we're just gonna go 20 minutes for folks who support the proposal. And then my alarm will go off and we'll wrap it up. And then there'll be 20 minutes for those who are opposed. Now, we could spend all day tomorrow, the next day and the next day, right? But we just don't have the time. And so, and how this works, one person could talk for 20 minutes or 20 people can talk for 1 minute. It's going to be your choice how you use your time. And so, and then I would just suggest when you're finished, go ahead and leave the chair so somebody else can fill that chair and we'll just move as fast as we can. Okay, go ahead, Senator. What do you have?
I'm sorry. I would like to say that our 4 people that were in our position before have brought quite a few proposals. And I just wanted to make sure everybody realized that. In 1939, we had an income tax limit 2 that they had brought that they wanted to join in a convention. They in 59, they had limited federal powers they wanted to talk about. In 61 and 79, they wanted to talk about balanced budget. In 63, they wanted to talk about the Supreme Court things that they were doing at that time. And then 63, they had another one and another one in 63. But in 2017, they rescinded, or 2009, I think they rescinded them all.
All of them, yeah.
Except the one we passed in
You know, and
2017.
it's a good reminder, I think, to all of us in this room. And, you know, all these core issues of the state, we're not the first people to talk about them. And we won't be the last. So
No,
pretty soon we'll be all those dead guys on the wall out there.
That's right.
And
I
there'll be
just
other
wanted to
people
make
talking
sure
about it.
that Wyoming has proposed these before. We should not be scared.
So we'll just keep working it.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to move to public comment. All those folks in favor are going to start first. I'm going to start my timer and go ahead and introduce yourself. Who wants to start? Okay, go ahead, introduce yourself, who you represent, where you're from.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Mark Meckler. I'm the president of Convention of States Action, and I'm a resident of Texas. And I'm here representing the millions of folks across the country that are looking to call this Convention of States, and also the tens of thousands here in your great state. We sit at a crossroads in American history where the federal government has usurped the power of all the states, and specifically your great state. They own a huge chunk of the land in your state. On average, state budgets are 65% controlled by the federal government in one way or another with some form of strings. And this is antithetical to the form of government proposed by the framers of the Constitution. We're blessed because the framers were prescient and they gave us Article 5, and specifically the second clause of Article 5, because they understood human nature. Human nature naturally centralizes power. And so they were given power and they have centralized that power to a great degree. In 1789, when the Constitution was ratified, it was ratified providing for 17 enumerated powers of the federal government. And those framers said that those powers were limited, enumerated, and the powers that you all were supposed to have in the states were unenumerated and unbounded. Essentially, everything else went to the people in the states. Of course, today it seems like the federal government, and I'm exaggerating, it seems like they have 17 million powers now, mostly granted by the federal courts, overreached by the government, and then enforced by the federal courts. So today we have the opportunity to do something extraordinary, which is to step into the place that the framers created for us, to call for a convention of states to propose amendments. And I want to pause there and focus on that language for a moment. The convention itself has no legal authority other than to propose amendments. I like to call it a suggesting convention. So men and women from all over the country, appointed by great state legislatures like yours, will gather, will debate, and we'll make some suggestions to the states. And if 26 of the states can agree on a suggestion or a group of suggestions, then those suggestions will be sent out for ratification to the states. And then it takes a super majority, 38 states, to ratify anything that comes out of convention. I would say the primary objection I hear to what we're undertaking today here in this legislature, and we passed in 19 other legislatures around the country so far, is the idea of what people call a runaway convention. The idea that the delegates who are charged by you and commissioned by you and in your state under penalty of law are told the limited amount of things they're allowed to do are going to go there. They're going to violate their oaths. They're going to engage in behavior that could cause them to be recalled by your legislature. But if not recalled, theoretically, and this is the fear, they could propose, for example, the repeal of the Second Amendment. This is the one I hear most commonly. So that's why I use that as an example. Today in the United States of America, there are 25 states which have constitutional carry, permitless carry of a firearm. They're actually, Florida will be the 26th here in the next couple of weeks. There are 24 states where you can carry your handgun into the state legislature. And believe it or not, there are 14 states where you can take a loaded long gun, put one in the chamber, sling it across your back and sit in the gallery and watch the proceedings. So I'm not saying that's a good idea, but that's allowed in 14 states. It's important when we do the math that we remember if it takes 38 states to ratify, it takes only 13 states to stop anything that we wouldn't like. In reality, how legislatures work, it takes only one house in each of the 13 states to stop anything we wouldn't like. And structurally, procedurally, the way a state stops an amendment from being ratified is that the legislature does nothing. Literally, you don't bring it up in a committee, you never debate it, you never discuss it, you just let it die. And so I would posit to you the idea that we could get something really wild proposed left or right, frankly, and ratified by 38 states, just it flies in the face of logic and math. There is nothing that we could think of that's radical one way or the other that could not be stopped by 13 bodies in the 50 states. There are 99 total legislative bodies. We need only 13 bodies to stop it. So the idea of a runaway convention is fallacious, and it is intended to keep people like us from utilizing the tools that the founders gave us in order to preserve the Constitution, tools that are part of that Constitution. I also hear, I'm going to address just a couple more things and then I'll close. I hear regularly that, well, we've had one constitutional convention in American history, 1787. This, of course, is not a constitutional convention. It's an Article 5 amending convention. But I hear that that convention ran away. And I want to put that myth to rest. I think it's really important. The founders and framers, many of them in that convention were men of honor and virtue. A lot of us would agree with that. And the idea that they just simply threw away their oaths and did whatever they wanted is an outrageous slur. And I have read, and you can read their commissions that give them their authority. And those commissions say that they have any and all authority necessary to render the federal Constitution adequate. So they had unlimited authority when they went into that convention. Madison spoke about that afterwards. You're going to hear a lot of hyperbole about the things Madison said. They're mostly taken out of context, to be honest with you. I'll close with this. This procedure was given to us by the framers of the Constitution for a time such as this. On the floor of convention on September 15th, 1787, Colonel George Mason rose and he addressed the men assembled. So this is 2 days before the end of convention. They were virtually done. And he stood and he said, we've made a mistake. In this document, we gave the power to Congress to propose amendments, and we didn't give the power to the people acting through the states. And he asked a question, are we so naive that we believe that a Congress and a federal government that become tyrannical will ever propose amendments to restrain their own tyranny? Now, I imagine they laughed because human beings don't restrain their own tyranny. It's not human nature. We don't have a videotape, but we do have, in fact, Madison's notes. And at that point, they say two Latin abbreviations, nin com. That stands for no comment. In other words, there was no debate. And these are men who debated everything. They debated how to debate. But on this point, there was total agreement. They proposed language and they unanimously adopted this clause into the Constitution. It's the only thing I'm aware of was proposed and adopted unanimously without debate. They were looking forward to the future at a time when it would need to be used. And they gave you, the state legislatures, the power. They gave you that power because they were you. Most of them had served on town councils and in colonial legislatures and in legislatures under the Articles of Confederation. And it's not that they thought you would be better or wiser people than the federal government. It's that they knew you would be closer to the people. And I can tell you, having traveled to 48 states and been in the legislatures in most of them, I actually have great faith in the state legislatures. I think the best of America is seen in our state legislatures all over the country. And I ask that you pass this resolution out of committee and allow people of the great state of Wyoming a full debate on the floor. And I'm happy to stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Meckler. Okay, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Adams said our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people, and it is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. You mentioned quite often the high morality of the original framers of our Constitution. And then I see this, which was handed out, this Wyoming statute 9-22-102, which limits the delegates that we would send from the state of Wyoming. You mentioned the unlimited powers of those original delegates. Why do you suppose we need to have this statute in place today? And does that impact what a convention might look like?
Mr. Meckler.
Mr. Chairman, Honorable Representative Bear, I appreciate that question. My honest opinion is we don't need this statute. My honest opinion is the delegates are already limited as a matter of common law under the common law of agency. Most folks in here have done business. You've hired an insurance agent. The agent has only the authority with which you imbue them. If they were to try to bind you for a policy greater than that which you had contracted for, that would be non-binding. It would be a null vote. That the same law of agency applies to the agents that you will appoint to act on your behalf. Many states pass these pieces of legislation, what I call delegate limitation acts, because they feel better. They're nervous about something like this. They want to know that they can impose criminal penalties in the event, and they're also trying to assuage constituents that have concerns. So my personal opinion is that these delegate limitation acts are unnecessary, but I understand why they make people feel better.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Meckler, you mentioned that you didn't think anything radical would pass. And we just talked about the morality. What I was trying to intimate is the change in morality in our culture. I think there was quite a bit of information given about how quickly our deficit is growing. And I tie that directly to our morality. When a government spends money erratically and irrationally, it is a way of imprisoning the people. So we have a government and we have a society that has allowed this to happen. My personal belief, that's a degradation in our society's morality. And I think that this particular statute in the Wyoming statutes is probably necessary for that reason. And it has teeth in it. So having said that, is a balanced budget a radical thing?
Mr. Chairman, Honorable Representative, I don't believe it's a radical thing, but more importantly than me is the opinion of the population of the United States of America. That's an issue that's been pulled consistently for about 30 years now. And the percentage of the American public in favor of some form of balanced budget amendment has run consistently 80 to 85% over the last 30 years. So I would say when you have an 80 to 85% majority is in favor of a particular proposition, I would like to see that imposed on the federal government by the people, that's not a radical idea.
How many states have balanced budget requirements?
At last count, and I may not be exactly accurate, but I believe it was 41 states have some form of balanced budget amendment imposed on them.
Okay.
49, I'm sorry.
49, that's a number. Okay, Representative Locke has a question. Now, I just want to remind everybody, 9:22 left in this. We're moving, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to ask a question. So going through this, you talked about federal government overreach. So question I have is, do you perceive that the issue is federal government overreach, or are we dealing more with states' comfort and to comply? That's what a question I would really like to understand, what the perception and where the break of this is, because that's certainly core to this whole discussion, in my opinion, at least.
Mr. Chairman, Honorable Representative Locke, my opinion would be it's both. Over a long period of time, we have had federal government overreach. The federal government started to grow really dramatically in 1913. A bunch of things happened in 1913, the Fed, the 16th Amendment, 17th Amendment. Those things in many ways neutered the authority of the state governments. The federal government was never intended to have a direct relationship with the taxpayer. That was supposed to be mediated by the states. 17th Amendment removed the state's authority over the federal government directly in a federal legislative body. And so I think at that point, the states sort of became secondary to the federal government. And I would argue, and I think you're pointing at something correct, I think a lot of states have become comfortable with being in a secondary position to the federal government. And I think that's one of the reasons this is so important, because this is a chance for the states to say, you know, we've decided we don't like this so much. We've seen the results of this happening since 1913. The results aren't good, and we want to stand up and say no.
Turn my mic on. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you,
And I'll
Mr.
move
Chairman.
on to next. And if you gentlemen would vacate your chairs, others can fill those chairs. Go ahead. You want to introduce yourself, Mr. Galios?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Sam Galiotis, and bringing it a little bit closer to home. I'm a Wyoming native, a businessman, an active community member, and a father of 2 Wyoming teenagers whose future in this state concern me based on the negative impacts of our state experiences at the hands of Washington, D.C. Like many, I'm heavily tenured and vested in our great state, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially. I encourage this committee to pass SJ 11 so that it can be debated on the floor. It's no secret, as we've just spoke about, our federal government has put us all into a fiscal nightmare. And that is the truth. While trampling on Wyoming state rights over and over again, I've watched and listened while you, this body, and other state leaders have labored over the damage from the unilateral decisions out of Washington that have caused hurt to Wyoming's economy. Washington, D.C. is past self-correction at this point. It's time to take action. Our fiscal situation and the mitigation of state rights will get even worse unless the states take action to restore balance with the feds. This legislative body, along with its counterparts across the nation, have an opportunity to set things right. The solution is made available to us, as we've been speaking about, through Article 5 of the Constitution. And you are the only ones that can help make this happen. Wyoming needs to stand up, be counted, and help set the course right. I have watched discussion on this topic over the past few years, and I must say there's a great deal of misinformation, misunderstanding, and frankly, misrepresentation related to an Article 5 Convention of States. Mr. Chairman, I make one simple request of all of you. Please listen carefully to what's been said today regarding this initiative. Allow the facts to see sunlight and follow in the footsteps of 19 other states who have joined in this cause. If you do, I believe you will come to the same conclusion I have come to, and that is this initiative is our best chance to set things right for the state of Wyoming. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Galios? Thank you for your testimony. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Galiotis. Mr. Meckler had mentioned that there's polls that show that 80% of the American people would like to have a balanced budget. Why do you think that these same 80% have continued to elect officials to our federal government that have allowed us to get into this budget mess?
Any opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't know that I would have a qualified opinion, Mr. Chairman, but to answer the question, I think that's part of the problem of Washington, D.C. and having the same people there year after year after year after year.
Sure. Okay, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate you being here. Go ahead. You're next. Introduce yourself, please. Thank you for your testimony.
Yes, my name is Paul Crouch. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for this hearing to discuss SJ 11 Convention of States Resolution.
Who do you represent and where are you from?
I'm from Laramie, Wyoming, and with Convention of States.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
You bet. SJ 11 is about proposing amendments to our federal constitution. We hear arguments for this resolution in this hearing today. Some are quite compelling, but there is opposition to this Convention of States resolution within our local GOP party and maybe within the minority party. I think everyone agrees there is a perception that our federal government does not follow the Constitution in many areas that affect the state level. Perception is reality, to quote a cliche. The issue is that many interpret this pocket constitution in different ways. Let me address these competing sides of the argument, and I wish to use an analogy, if I may. In doing so, I'm going to discuss two subjects that I've been told to avoid: religion and politics. I also have a pocket Bible, and many interpret the Bible in many different ways. Now, how are these related? Let me discuss some of my personal experiences. I can remember when I attended college, I was studying in the student union, and various religious groups would approach me and try to convince me on various doctrinal issues. Is baptism necessary to be saved? How often should we take communion? Should we have piano music in church? Some of these questions, if not all, can progress to divisive and bitter debates. As I have grown older and I've seen what my children have been exposed to in secular colleges and even religious seminaries, they have been taught that all religions lead to the same outcome. This is a whole new ballgame. So do Christians, Islamists, Buddhists, and Hindus have the same constitution, if you will? No. They have different Bibles or constitutions. So suddenly I realized that what I once vehemently argued in my college days was not as important as the bigger picture. What I'm saying here is our differences are small that we have amongst ourselves about the effectiveness of returning the state's power through amendments. It is preferred over the left's radical agenda to rewrite the Constitution. We appear to want the same outcomes. The question is, what method should we use to accomplish this? We both want the federal government to follow the Constitution. What we have to realize that we need to come together on a workable and legal solution to curb the federal powers and restore state powers. The Convention of States solution is to amend our Constitution to correct past Supreme Court rulings that have permanently expanded the federal powers over states' rights. The Supreme Court, through their court decisions, have essentially made soft amendments. Okay. The Article 5 Convention of States method is a safe, legal, peaceful, and constitutionally sound method. I think the opposition's method is nullification, which is not in our Constitution. This method, the last time it was tried, led to a civil war. And I don't think any of us wants to put the country through that again. We urge you to see the big picture and support SJ 11.
Hey, any questions for Mr. Crouch? Quick question here.
So you made a statement that clearly the government is outside the bound, in your perception is they're outside the bounds of the current Constitution. And we, the states, clearly, or it appears, don't look like we have pushed back. So what is this event? Why is this going to be different in terms of the states taking back their sovereignty from that perspective? And how does this actually change a government that says that document, well, my interpretation is that's not true. Just using that as an example. Thank you.
Sure. Through the chairman, through the representative. Yes, I believe that an amendment, the Supreme Court follows the law, but they've made the decision to, like the Commerce Clause. The Commerce Clause was interpreted very differently the first 100 years of our country than it is in the second 100 years. Okay, if we make an amendment to restrict the Commerce Clause, the Supreme Court will have to follow that amendment.
I'm gonna Move on now. You're the last one and you get 1 minute. Okay, so briefly introduce yourself and
For a greater part of a
is your
decade
mic
now.
on? Is your mic on there?
Let me just be closer. My name is David Montano. I've been a Wyoming resident for the greater part of a decade now. I'm a Florida native and the son of immigrants that escaped communism and despotism. As a Christian, a father, a husband, and a veteran, I am set on doing what I can to ensure that despotism does not encroach on our way of life here in the United States of America. I think we only need to look to the founding of this great nation to understand the gravity of this legislation. The founders were in a position that few in the history of mankind ever were. That original position of being able to constitute for us all a government that serves the polity and not itself is rare. We find ourselves here today to discuss the opportunity to take part in, maybe not the constitution of a new government, but the amending of the very document that constitutes the one we already have. That too is rare and is an opportunity that we should not squander. The justifications and reasons to limit the power and scope of our federal government should be clear to everyone. The runaway debt, the legislative deference to the executive branch, the corporate regulatory capture that we see, or I think the coercive nature of cooperative federalism are just a few that I can enumerate quickly. It is for these reasons that I encourage the passing of SJ 11.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank
Now,
you.
you're in Laramie?
No, sir, I'm
Cheyenne?
here in
Oh,
Cheyenne.
okay, great. We appreciate you. Any questions? Okay, appreciate your testimony. Thank you for, okay, members, and audience, we're gonna move now. Folks who are opposed to this resolution, if you just fill these chairs and I'm gonna start my timer and you'll get your 20 minutes. We appreciate you all being here. Okay, go ahead. Introduce yourself, where you're from, who you represent.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. Members of the committee, my name is David Iverson. I live in Buffalo. Something very important was just said by the previous speaker, that they don't follow the Constitution right now. And I think that many of us would probably agree that there are many things at the federal level that are not, they're done, they're not in the Constitution. So let me ask you a question. Why would they follow another amendment to the Constitution? Just because we say we really mean it now? I think we all know that if we just add another amendment to the Constitution, it's not going to solve the problem of them not following it. I'd like to be brief and just bring up 3 quick points. There is only one sentence in any of our founding documents that refers to the Article 5 Convention, and it's in the Constitution in Article 5. Just one sentence. Now, you've already heard a lot of stuff about how this thing is going to work and how the rules are going to be set. But if there is only one sentence in any of our founding documents, that means that there aren't any rules written right now. Now, let me give you 2 examples of why that's a problem. Well, if this Article 5 convention starts, then the rules will be set once it opens. You all know this because the very first thing you debated when the 67th legislature started was the rules. Now, you could have passed a rule that everybody had to wear green jackets and pink shoes. And if that rule passed, that's the way it would have, everything would have to be done on the floor. Another example, about 1.5 years ago, you all had a special session. The one purpose of that special session was to discuss mandates, vaccine mandates. There were several other bills that were proposed, one of which was a gambling bill that was debated on the floor. So what leads you to believe that any of these issues that are brought up in this resolution will be the only ones debated at the convention? I don't think that you can be certain of that at all. The second thing I'd like to bring up is this one state, one vote idea. Because all of the rules of the convention will be set once it opens, there's no guarantee that it will be one person, one vote. Again, whomever attends this convention could pass a rule that maybe it's 3 votes per state. Excuse me, 1 state, 1 vote is what I meant. And the reason you know that to be true is because the first constitutional convention went off the rails. Now, a previous speaker called it an outrageous slur and fallacious. It's neither of those things because it actually happened. Before I walked into this room, I looked up the National Archives website, and the very first thing under Constitutional Convention said that they convened a convention to revise the Articles of Confederation. That was the call of their convention. Now, they went way beyond that, and thank God they drafted the Constitution. We lucked out on that one, but I doubt very seriously that it will happen again. The analogy of an insurance agent not being able to go outside of their duties is an incorrect analogy, because an insurance agent is bound by criminal law. If they violate the law, they're held liable. There's nothing here that is going to hold any of these documents liable for anything. The last thing I would like to bring up real quick is that you are putting the people in charge, the people that caused the problem, in charge of the solution. Members of the committee, we don't have a problem with the Constitution. We have a problem with politicians. We have to solve the politician problem, not the Constitution problem that doesn't exist. Thank you, and I'll take any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, appreciate you being here today. Okay, next, go ahead. Now, if anybody has a phone that is not, go ahead and take your phone out. Yeah, shut it down. Thank you. That's a reminder to all of us. I'm taking mine right now. Okay, thank you. Okay, introduce yourself. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, committee, my name's Dan Sobrowski. I'm from Casper, Wyoming. I'm a precinct person, District 8-5. I'm also a founding member of Liberty's Place for You, a political group dedicated to educating the public on issues. So I bring up our group because we hold 3 to 4 town halls a year on issues of the day, whether it's our county or the state. We did have a town hall last year on the dangers of a convention of states, Article 5 convention of states. I also attended 2 of their town halls that they had put on, and by invitation, because this is a harsh topic between both entities, and we can get pretty hard on each other, but we both have a desire to maintain and protect our freedoms and liberties. So it's something I hold dear, that we work together. We may not agree on these solutions, but we need to come together on the ultimate idea here. But that being said, I'm against this idea. And there, 8 or 9 years ago, a book came out by a pretty well-known conservative commentary person. And I don't want to say his name or the book, because I don't want anybody to go get the book. I bought the book when it came out, and you couldn't knock me off this idea after reading that book. I wanted so badly for everybody to understand that a convention of states was the only way to fix our problems. But after a year of that and looking deeper, and one of the main things that knocked me off that horse finally was the understanding, and it comes from my own belief system and what I learned from homeschooling our own kids, that those founding fathers were men of what, and it's been said before, high honor, huge virtue, and they were very godly men, most of them. There was a small handful that weren't strong believers in God with a strong faith, and everything they did in prayer. Even their arguments, during the Convention of States, their arguments, they would go into prayer sometimes when it would get ugly. We don't do that. When I can, I attend a prayer meeting here in the Capitol before session. And at the most, there's 10 or 12 people at that prayer meeting. We are not sending men of high honor and high valor to the level that our founding fathers were, that they put what they were trying to do, they put in the hands of God. And at that time, the culture was not about kicking God out of schools and a sexual debauchery revolution. Our country is in moral decay. And if we think God is going to be involved in a current convention of states, we're out of our minds. We cannot open the Pandora's box that would be revisiting that document. We have got to protect it. We've got to start the way to fix the US Constitution is start in our own backyards, our own communities, start with your own hearts. What do you believe in the Constitution? Get things corrected at your own local levels, in your state levels. And if we do that as a people, we'll correct the federal level. So I just ask you to look at this very carefully, and if you can, vote no. Thank you.
Mr. Sabrowski. Okay, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, next, go ahead, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman, Committee. Marguerite Herman. I'm here for the League of Women Voters, nonpartisan group. And what I'm going to be doing is talking to you about our national organization position on the Convention of States. It's not going to be a Wyoming centric version of things. It's going to be sort of principles taking a national viewpoint, which will become apparent very quickly. So our National League got together in 2016 and saw that there was a lot of interest in this. And this is and what they say is that's fine, but here are the caveats that would make it to avoid the pitfalls that you've heard a little bit about today. I'll try to be as quick as I can. The League is concerned there are many unresolved questions about the powers and processes of an Article 5 Constitutional Convention. The League believes that such a convention should be called only in the following, if the following conditions are in place. The convention must be transparent and not conducted in secret. The public has a right to know what is being debated and voted on. Number two, representation at the Constitutional Convention must be based on population rather than one state, one vote, and delegates should be elected rather than appointed. The delegates represent citizens, should be elected by them, and must be distributed by U.S. population. Voting at the Constitutional Convention must be by delegate, not by state. Delegates from one state can have varying views and should be able to express them by individual votes. The Constitutional Convention must be limited to a specific topic. It is important to guard against what has been termed a runaway convention. I know some people have problems with that term, but we all know what they're talking about, which considers multiple issues or topics that were not initiated by the states. Only state resolutions on a single topic count when determining if a convention should be called. So that if you have it has to be a critical group mass of states on a particular topic. I've heard calls for conventions based on the ballot budget amendment, on Citizens United overturning that. And I've even heard a few earlier in today's testimony. So that should be, it should be an agreement to come together on a topic. And if there's sufficient interest in a particular subject to call a convention, and if it enhances citizens' interest and participation in the process, because we do that engagement as very basic to the legitimacy of the effort. And that concludes my comments. And once again, this was adopted by the Wyoming, by the National League of Women Voters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Ms. Herman, you said that's the National League of Women Voters. And so the stance is that they're against the one state, one vote. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, yes, they believe it's a population-based process and should be, first of all, the representatives should be elected, and they should be elected based on a population, one person, one vote kind of idea, because the citizens, it's the citizens doing the actions, not the discrete states.
Very good. Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I mean, I know it's just your opinion, but briefly, like, what do you think about that, and how do you think that would serve Wyoming?
Mr. Chairman. And you know what, and Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you, I've thought about this repeatedly, you know, because the league is also interested in the Electoral College, which again is extremely unfair because states of small population, Wyoming is always the poster child for that. How egregious is it? Well, look at Wyoming and versus California, New York. And I frankly think it should be based on, one of the basic tenets of the League of Women Voters has been one person, one vote. And so I remember during the redistricting process that there was talk about, well, do we really have to do that? Can't we just give every county their own rep, that sort of thing? And I think we stood dead against that. One person, one vote. It's proportional representation, especially when you're rewriting a constitution. Proportional representation for the effort. So. Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Anyone
Chairman.
else want to speak against this resolution? Got Got a few minutes here. Okay, I think is there anyone online to speak against it?
Mr. Chairman, I have 4 people online with their hand. Oh, I have more than that now. I'm not sure who's for and who's against. Do you
So
want
we're
me
at
to?
that point where it's just against. So can they hear us online? I'm supposed they can. So if we're just taking testimony against the resolution right now.
Mr. Chairman, I lowered everyone's hands. I'm asking only those that opposed to raise their hands. Mr. Chairman, I have 5 hands up. Do you want me to admit all 5? Mr. Chairman, I'm admitting Barb Luthi. Ms. Luthi needs to turn on her mic and her video.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, we can there we can see it. Go. And so we just have a few minutes left. You've heard, we've got about 5 minutes left on those folks who are against this resolution. And so if you would just introduce yourself, your name, who you represent, where you're from, where you're currently located today. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Barb Luthi. I represent myself. I am in my house in Cody, Wyoming.
Perfect.
And I am against this resolution. Some of the reason, there's a lot of time spent on the whole process, but my focus is actually human nature. And if it is our human nature to kind of gain more control, overstep our bounds, break the laws, and if there are no consequences to those actions, then by human nature, we will continue in those actions, overstepping our bounds, breaking laws. And I feel that our federal government has overstepped its bounds, broken the laws, not followed the Constitution, and we have not applied consequences to those actions. And until there are consequences to those actions, really passing more rules will not make any difference. And it's really up to we, the people, to understand the rules and to know the rules so that we can hold our representatives accountable. And we hold them accountable by knowing how they vote and being able to vote our representatives out every 2 years. So our representatives are a reflection of the people, as it should be. Our vote is a term limit. And as far as maybe if they proposed term limits to our Supreme Court justices, well, they're only in there under good behavior. So if we feel that they have not acted appropriately, then they should be off of the Supreme Court. So those are term limits. And our senators used to be appointed by state legislators. So our state legislators could hold our senators to term limits. So I'm against even term limits. I'm also against a balanced budget amendment, and that if there is no budget in the Constitution, there are already limits on the spending. And if we if we did have a balanced budget amendment, basically we would be codifying unconstitutional spending. So I would ask that you vote against this resolution and that we look at doing more nullification, as I said, stopping legislation that is unconstitutional by doing nothing or saying, no, we will not comply. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Any questions for Ms. Luthi? How's the snow up there in Cody?
Oh, it's already come down and it's really cold.
Same here. Okay, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Okay, we have about 1:20 seconds. If we've got one more person that wants to speak opposed to the resolution, we could zoom them in here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm admitting Julie Baker.
Julie Baker? Is that what you said?
Yes.
She's not against it, though.
Oh, we're taking folks who are against it.
She had her hand up. I'm sorry. I have an Eldon Stahl with his hand up.
Okay, that'd be great. And we've got about 45 seconds. It's hard to limit this because everybody's impassioned, but so we appreciate y'all being here. We can feel your energy out there.
Okay, can you see me, hear me?
Yes, good afternoon. You got about a little less than a minute. So if you'd be brief, introduce yourself, where you're from, who you represent.
Yep, Eldon Stahl, Evanston, Wyoming, representing myself, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just touch on a few things with limited time. It was mentioned that, oftentimes the convention supporters, they agree. They say, hey, the Constitution's not the problem. But they say, well, there's all these bad Supreme Court decisions that have been made. And what we need to do is change the Constitution to correct those. Well, let's think about that a little bit. How many bad decisions has the Supreme Court made over the years? I don't know, a lot. And so we're talking about a big revision of the Constitution, honestly, with this, if that's what we're trying to do. But oftentimes they say, well, don't worry, 38 states would have to ratify anything that would come out of a convention. So they're saying, well, probably nothing would come out of this, but nothing's wrong with the Constitution. It's as if we're on Seinfeld discussing nothing, a non-solution to a non-problem. So either way you cut it, this is just not something that we want to go into.
I appreciate it. I'm going to ask some members if they have any questions from you. Okay, and we're really limited, so we appreciate you joining us from Evanston today, twice today. Appreciate your commitment and dedication. So thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment. And members, again, we'd love to sit here all weekend and talk about this, but we just can't. And we got to get this on the, if we're going to move it forward, we got to move it forward, and we got to work the bill. So with that, we're going to close public comment. We're on Senate Joint Resolution 11. Members, what's your pleasure?
I'll move it.
Moved by Representative Zwanitzer. Seconded by Representative Oakley. Okay, members, let's work this resolution. We'll start on page 1. We're going to flip page by page. I just remind the audience too now, the process, if we do amend this, that's called a standing committee amendment. It has to be adopted by the full House, right? So some people think, this is the end of the game. This is only the beginning, right? Beginning in the second House. So, okay, we're on page 2. Any amendments?
Ask a question on page 2.
Oh, absolutely. Discussion on.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask what the limit, the power and jurisdiction of the federal government?
Tell us what line you're on.
That's on page 2, bottom of it, page 21, or line 21 and 22. It says limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. I'm just asking, what does that mean? Are we going to tell the BLM to go take a hike, or the Forest Service, or where are we? What does that mean?
Yeah, let's discuss that. I think that all, these are broad wipes here, but pose fiscal restraints, you could say, what does that mean? Limit power and jurisdiction. And then term limits. So Those are broad, certainly. Intentionally broad. I know it's not an answer, we're just discussion. Okay, Representative Oakley, any?
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I appreciate what the representative's saying because actually I think it is a specific concept to say impose fiscal restraint. It is a specific comment to concept to say limit the terms of office. But like limiting jurisdiction is a legal term that means something. Like what type of jurisdiction would we be discussing limiting, and probably have some answers, but I don't know if anybody on the panel has any idea, but not only is it a broad concept, I agree with the representative. I'm not sure what that means.
Okay. Any more discussion, or we're gonna keep moving, or are there amendments? And you could come back, I guess, if you want. Okay. You can come back if you please. Okay, we're gonna keep working amendments, page 2 on to page 3. Okay, flipping over to page 4. Any amendments on page 4? Okay, and then page 5. Okay, and then finally page 6. Okay, and I'll pause. Members, any amendments before we call for the question? Okay.
Questions?
I think so. The question being called and you know, I don't do a lot of this as chairman where we sit here and explain our vote and then you have to listen to us for 30 minutes. So we're not going to do that. But if you want to, we're all available to talk to any of you, right? You can grab us right outside the door. Got all our phone numbers on the legislative website, all those kind of things. But you're going to, and you know, whatever happens with this bill, we'll just see here in a minute. But if it does go forward, it'll be referred to the House and then be put on the committee of the whole for further action. Okay, so with that question being called, please call the roll on Senate Joint Resolution 11. There are no amendments.
Representative Bear,
No.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke, Representative Northrup, Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
No.
Representative Strock,
No.
Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman Harshman. The bill passes 5 ayes or no.
Thank you all for being here. We'll transition now to the next bill. Yeah.
Quick question for the sponsor, if he already has someone floor managing this. Is it me? Oh, good. Okay, just make sure.
And there you have it, folks. You have been watching a hearing of the Wyoming House Committee on Revenue in consideration of our Article 5 Convention of States legislation SJ 11. And they've just voted to pass the resolution on to the full Wyoming House by a vote of 5-4. And I will tell you, all of us here on the national team were sitting with our fist clenched, white knuckled, waiting for that vote because we weren't sure how it was going to go. So congratulations to our Wyoming team. We are expecting Senior Regional Director Dave Schneider and or COS President Mark Meckler to join us in just a moment for a short interview reacting to today's hearing. I am breathing a big sigh of relief. Wasn't quite sure how that was going to go. We knew it was going to be close, and we pulled out a win in this Wyoming House Committee on Revenue today. The resolution was introduced by our primary sponsor in Wyoming, Senator Dan Larson. He did a great job of reading through that and explaining what the resolution does. It applies for an Article 5 convention to propose amendments to the U.S. on just 3 topics: imposing fiscal restraints on the federal government, limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and setting term limits for federal officials. Those are the three topics. So the convention for proposing amendments would be limited to proposing amendments that fall under one of those three topics. Mark Meckler, our COS president and co-founder, was there in the committee room, and he kicked off proponent testimony, did a great job of describing the problem and the need for an Article 5 convention to rein in our runaway federal government. Folks, this is Rory, my big dog. He wanted to make a short appearance on the program today, and he's celebrating with me. We're really happy about this Wyoming House Committee vote today. Of course, in Wyoming, the Senate has already passed the resolution for the first time ever in Wyoming, and so now we are headed to the full House of Wyoming and looking to see if we can pull out a victory. Will Wyoming be state number 20 to pass this Article 5 application? That is the question on everyone's minds. So Producer G, looking to see if we have either Dave Schneider or Mark Meckler ready yet. Doesn't look like we do. So again, if you're new to Convention of States, I'll let you know that 19 states have already passed our Article 5 resolution. We need 34 states, or 2/3 of the states, to apply for an Article 5 convention in order to trigger the first ever Convention of the States in American history. And, you know, some of our opponents will often say, well, we shouldn't do this because it's never been done before in the history of America. And others will tell you, including myself, that's part of the problem. This is a check that the states were given in Article 5 of the Constitution in order to check the power of the federal government. And the fact that that power has never yet been used is part of the reason that Congress and the other branches of the federal government have been able to get away with years and years of abuse of power and federal overreach. It's the reason, at least part of the reason, why Congress has racked up $31 trillion of debt that our children and grandchildren will bear. And it's time for the states to use this power they were given under Article 5 of the Constitution to check and balance the federal government and send more power back to the states, closer to the people, where decisions are best made. So I'm just going to take a quick hold here and see if we've got either Senior Regional Director Dave Schneider or COS President Mark Meckler ready to join us yet. Doesn't look like they are here yet. I will tell you, we are expecting a committee hearing in Iowa, in the Iowa House State Government Committee. That should be starting up any moment if it has not already started. So we might have to leave off with our interviews and switch over to bring you coverage of that hearing. I'm going to take a quick pause, Producer G, so we can regather and figure out where we're going next. Thanks for watching. So folks, apparently we're having a little bit of trouble. Oh, I was just about to say we're having trouble getting a good signal from Dave or Mark. And there we have Dave and Mark. Hey guys,
Hey guys, how are you?
congratulations. We're a lot better after seeing you pull out that victory.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that's as close as it gets. And we literally had somebody texting with people on the committee as the vote was being taken and answering some questions. So it was a little surprising. We lost a co-sponsor, which is kind of unusual and surprising. So we'll have to talk to her and see what happened. And when we lost her, both Dave and I were thinking, uh-oh, got to run the tables now.
Yeah, I can tell you my heart did skip a few beats there. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I just talked with her not too long ago. So we're going to figure it out, though. And we're going to go to the floor and get this thing done. I mean, that's our next step here. So just trying to figure out where the targets are, and we're going to be working it pretty hard.
Dave,
Yeah, if we sound a little subdued, we're a little subdued because we're sitting right outside the committee hearing room right now. And so we have to be a little bit quiet. Otherwise, I'd be jumping up and down and screaming.
yes. Mark, I want to come back to you in a minute, but Dave, you're our senior regional director, and your region, of course, the Wild West region covers Wyoming. I know you're in touch with the grassroots daily out there. What are they thinking, feeling, saying? I'm sure they are just thrilled, but anything in particular?
They're jumping up for joy right now because they know that they're going to the floor of the House, and they're one step away from passage here in the state of Wyoming, becoming state number 20. They're very excited. There's over about 500 emails that have gone into the legislature just today before this vote. So you can imagine it's going to be ramped up going into the floor. We could be on the floor as early as tomorrow, by the way. It's very fast turnaround, and we have to get this all done by next Monday. So it's going to be fast, it's going to be furious, and we're going to be pushing for a vote because, again, we don't want to die after going through 3 of the hurdles of the 4. So it's crunch time. So they're ecstatic, yet also very nervous that we got a lot of work to do over the weekend.
Absolutely. So Mark, you've been in Cheyenne, Wyoming for a few days now, braving an impending blizzard, and I know you're a little bit under the weather. I am really impressed always by your commitment to this cause. How do you do it? What makes you, travel, spend so many nights in a hotel, so many days on an airplane? Why do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just the grassroots. So wherever you go, and we didn't have a big grassroots turnout here today. I know a lot of them are frustrated. When Dave and I came out of our hotels this morning, literally it was minus 21 degrees without a wind chill. And so that gives you an idea of kind of the obstacles that our grassroots had getting here. This whole state was frozen over. Yeah, there's tons of snow in parts of the state. And so a lot of people, like our great state director, Julie Baker, couldn't be here. She's always here. She has to drive 7 hours, but she couldn't be here. So for me, and I don't speak for Dave when I say this, we're here because of the grassroots. We're motivated by them. We're inspired by them. And I also have to say, Rita, people say, oh, Mark, you're all over the country and you're flying all over and doing all this stuff. That is true. I would argue Dave puts as much time in the airplane seat and more in the car seat than I do. This is true for a bunch of our regional directors. There's a bunch of us. Mike Ferris has been traveling incessantly. Rick Santorum traveling incessantly. So a lot of people give me credit for it, and I appreciate the kudos, but it goes to everybody who's out there being road warriors.
Absolutely. Well, we are so grateful for what you're doing. And, at the national team at Convention of States Action, we're all about serving the grassroots. That's why we're here. And we're so proud of that Wyoming team. I know Julie Baker was online waiting to testify virtually, and we just ran out of time before they got to her. But I want to say personally, congratulations, Mark, Dave, and the entire Wyoming team. This was a great victory today, and I know you're not going to stop. We're headed for the floor, and we're going to keep making those contacts and telling these legislators why we want them to do their duty and use Article 5. Any parting shots, Mark, Dave?
Yeah, I would just say to all of you who are in Wyoming who might be watching, now is not the time to rest. We could be on the floor as early as tomorrow, if not Monday, but it's going to be fast. It's going to be furious, and we're not across the finish line. I make no guarantees here. This is going to go all the way down to the wire, and we're just going to put everything we've got into it. And as I always say, as John Quincy Adams said, the duty is ours, the results belong to God. So we're just going to go out there and give it our all.
Absolutely. Mark, Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And you heard it straight from them. They're on the ground in Wyoming, in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Sorry, folks, it's been a long day already, and it's not over yet because we are still waiting for news of possible committee hearing in Iowa in the House State Government Committee. That could be starting up any moment. But for now, we're going to celebrate this 5-4 victory in the Wyoming Revenue Committee. We are now headed to the full House of Wyoming for a vote for final passage, where Wyoming just might be state number 20 to join this Convention of States movement. So stay tuned. If we do get that Iowa committee hearing, we'll be bringing you live stream of that as soon as they're started up.